I'd like to move us into the next segment of the presentation and introduce our next speaker. So I'd like to call Warner de Hoyer up to the stage, please. Warner works for Cisco, and he is the global leader for field services, so a pretty significant mission, and he's part of the Global Services Logistics and Operations Group based out of San Jose. And before that, he worked for Volkswagen, and I have to apologize for Sunday morning, given the soccer reference we just heard, but
let's not talk about that.
So I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll talk in a few minutes.
Sounds good. Good morning, folks. In the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to give you a glimpse into the Cisco Service Logistics and Operations team. And I'll pull up a simple map here. Earlier this morning, you heard about General Motors and their manufacturing supply chain. In the next 30 minutes, we're really going to focus on the service supply chain. So the thing that keeps my customers up at night is network uptime. Data transmissions that are broken, inaccessibility to the digital world. Those items are what they want to prevent. And for that, they purchase a service contract. So it's really the post-purchase experience. You already have your equipment. You already have it installed. Now you need to make sure that it stays up and running for as long as you require during your business operations. Therefore, from Cisco, you can acquire a 2-hour service contract or a 4-hour service contract, next business day, next calendar day. Depending on your criticality of the equipment, you will buy the service contract that applies to your company the best. Then in order to provide that 2-hour or 4-hour or next business day support to get the parts, not only the part there, potentially even the field services engineer, you can acquire both services. We therefore build a network of warehouses that you see here on the map. We support Cisco customers in over 138 countries with these 2-hour and 4-hour services. So imagine you have an outage, you are awake at night because that will keep you up, and you call Cisco, then 2 hours later, after you hang up the phone, you have a part at the front of your data center. And if you need a skilled person to install this part for you, you can also get the FE. So a lot of complexities that goes into this system, particularly if you realize that much of this is done through collaboration with Cisco partners. We don't own warehouses. On the map, you see 1,200 warehouses globally in over 138 countries. We don't own any of those. We own the inventory, but we don't own the people that drive that part from the warehouse to your customer site. There's over 3,000 field services engineers that Cisco has access to provide that customer support. We don't own those field engineers. They are a partnership with us. So that's kind of the foundation, right? A very complex system, lots of partners that you work with, and realizing that and getting visibility into that aspect is what we'll share with you in the next in the next session here. Good. What have we done with GIS and where are we taking it is what this conversation is about in the next 30 minutes. We have taken our depot locations, those 1,200 plus depots. We've taken our customer sites. I didn't show those on the map, but there's roughly 20 plus million customer sites that have a service contract with us for the post-purchase experience. The RMA processing time, it takes the phone call, it takes the API to the warehouse, it takes an API to the vendor, to the field engineer, those processing times. And last but not least, another input is RMA address. Take those 4 simple inputs, just 4, and we've been able to digitize and automate our premium service coverage. That means our 2-hour service capabilities, our 4-hour service capabilities, they are driven onto a map using drive time calculations, including traffic factors. With those geofences, we can then understand the relationship between the geofence and the customer site. Plotting those customer sites on the map and intersecting the two allows us to automate the assignment of the customer site to the warehouse and thereby plan the part accordingly. The next level that's not on this slide, but you'll see on a later slide, is also having that type of automation for our field engineers, where the customer will be associated to an FE with the right skill level. But we'll get there in a moment. What we have done so far as well is we've automated then the depot dispatch. Customers may move parts. They may not leave them at the site where they purchased them. They may move the corporation. They may move the parts into a different location. So when it comes to the ad hoc dispatching point, the depot and the RMA selection process is done in the background all automatically. Another item is RMA insights, knowing where the hotspots are, knowing where your error problems are, knowing where the good problems are. All of that has been captured. And one thing that's often forgotten is the recognition of trade boundaries. Trade boundaries can also be tax boundaries, by the way. The tool and the GIS has allowed us to automatically recognize those, and so the tools knows them, and therefore it's an automated process. So far in what we've done with the GIS technology. But we're not done. We want to go further, and we want to continue this digitization effort. Critical in achieving this process is a simplicity. The simpler the tools are, the more intuitive, as we've heard this morning as well, the easier it is to use them and to get the adoption across the organization. If it's a very complex thing to see and read on the screens, it becomes more difficult, especially when you consider the scale and the organization, the size of the organization. Right? Remember the 3,000 field engineers. Okay, if they start using it, I need to have a very broad and simple adoption process. No manuals anymore. If you remember your Windows 3.1 days, you had a manual next to your desk to read through. How do I use this? How do I use this? No more manuals. You have an iPhone. You're not carrying a big book to understand how to use this app on my iPhone. So, simplicity. Integration with other tools. We've taken GIS and we've integrated it with our Pegasystems, which is where we capture the order, and into our Oracle e-business suite, where we process and fulfill the order. And we're driving it further into our organization, into our partners. So integration is critical for the success and the continuation. The visualization comes back to kind of point number one, but it's also its own item, because with the map, you're able to get an executive summary of the data, of a very large-scale data set, and understand that very rapidly. And most importantly, the analytics. If I can't run reports on what I'm seeing on that screen, I just have visualization, and that's not what we can do with, you can do anything with it. So you need to have the reporting, the analysis, and everything that sits behind it. So with the further drive into the GIS world for Cisco, we achieved to continue to drive our administrative burdens down, manual burdens down, and drive for higher accuracy levels. Taking the manual world out often increases the accuracy levels. So here on the screen, I'm showing a couple of those overviews of where we're taking GIS, right? You've seen where we are, now the next wave. The next wave is really for us not only around parts, but also field engineers. And so on one of the screens, the upper one we'll discuss first, it's really about the delivery insights. Where am I over-delivering? Where am I under-delivering? What are some of the pain points in the area? What are my risks in the field? And proactively solving those risks to make sure that Cisco's coverage and abilities is aligned with our customers' needs and contractual obligations. The second view here gives us a view for our sales account. They work with customers, and many of our customers have thousands of sites. We saw a grocery store this morning with 14,000 plus sites, amazing numbers. We would run those sites through a analyzer, and it would plot them all on the map. And then there's a summary level that says, hey, I can do X numbers of sites at a 2-hour support, X numbers of sites of a 4-hour support, and work with the customer to make sure that that fits their needs and that makes sense for them. So it's the ability to sell the services to them. And the third one that's biggest on the screen here, it really gives us insight into our operations, a common operations platform, where we see the weather, where we see the traffic, impacting our field engineers that are on its way to the customer, impacting the part that is on its way to the customer. Often these two dispatches come from different locations. Imagine you have 3,000 engineers, stocking them all with inventory gets very expensive. Hence, we have 1,200 warehouses from where we ship the parts, and then you have the FE to go there as well. So knowing which traffic, which weather, which patterns impact their ability to get to the customer site is critical to allow the customer to see what's happening as well. Trends, it's interesting that it was talked about before as well, but these are the items that are going on in the field services. So just to kind of baseline and kind of deep dive into the field services industry. Field services industry, and I'm sorry I didn't get a quote from McKinsey or Gartner or Forrester. Mine is from Markets and Markets, not as established, I will give you that. But from the industry that I work in, it's supposed to be doubling between now and the next 5 years. That's quite a rapid growth. And in that growth, a couple of trends that come across and that are highlighted in the industry are, I'll go through them, right? Automation, mobility, predictive maintenance, IoT, AR, virtual reality, the training, which interestingly enough was mentioned in the Walmart aspect as well. Customer soft skills. Soft skills can be done by training as well, so it kind of overlap, but it's called out separately. And the inventory management, hybrid inventory managements. I've circled 2 of them, automation and mobility. Because with those 2, I can get a lot of the benefits that I'm seeking for. So automation, if I fill in automation for the map and I have the mobility with the map and the mobility, I can achieve that automation. So therefore, I kind of combine them. Take, for example, the FE, tracking the FE on the road, knowing where they are, and I can have the geofences, the intersections with those, that can then digitize and automate the customer notifications of your FE is almost there, he's on his way, he's just arrived, those types of notifications. So those 2 for me are the focal point for the next couple of years to focus on and to realize. In that map and that phone, I have a fun example here that is one of my current challenges. And you may all remember from the GMAT test or whatever tests you may have taken, there was always a question about train A leaves the station at 10 o'clock, train B leaves a different station at 11 o'clock. At which station do they intersect? That was a fun test back then, but the real world is different. It is car A leaves location B, but there's a traffic light there. There's a reroute, by the way, so now they have to go that way. There's never a straight line as our trains have it. So the challenge that we have is you have, again, parts coming from location A. They're being stopped at a traffic light or whatever traffic they run into. FE being dispatched from another location. Make sure that gets to the customer site at the same time so that the FE can walk into the building with the part in hand that they just received outside. Or maybe I have them meet up at a Starbucks location, which is nearby, or a FedEx or a UPS store. Those intersection points weren't part of our GMAT tests. They are part of the real world tests. So this is one of the examples and giving you insights into where Cisco is taking the GIS technology. We have done a lot with it, but we aim to get a lot further with it. And with that, I believe I am at the end of that insight. But
Thank you very much, Warner.
thank you. Thank you.
So I have to comment and offer some respect because I also run a services organization, and I think it's complicated to figure out how to get 700 or so consultants to our customer site. But what you described, especially that last thing, it's just a whole nother world. So
it's a glimpse. It's a glimpse into a whole nother world.
and I wonder, as you look at the technology and the art of the possible of all the things you can do to improve that process, there's low-hanging fruit, there's very difficult things, and they have different returns on investment for you. So how do you and your stakeholders go about the process of really thinking about where to put your energy and where to go in this whole supply chain?
Yeah, there's always ropes pulling you in many directions, so to speak, right? Investments, there's only so much money, you have to invest wisely to get to the outcome there. ROI is one of them, but it's not the only one. Really, our organization has pivoted to the customer experience. You can call it NPS, you can call it CX-SAT, whatever you want to call it, but the customer experience and the data that we get through surveys that the customer provide feedback on really tells us how do we prioritize. It's not about the scores, it's about what the customers are telling us. It's in the verbatims. So we actually read all of them. And there was a funny example actually where one of our territory managers was reading one of the customer feedbacks, And the comment was, you'll probably never read this, and so he sent a comment back nice to say, hey, we did read it and we're very happy with your feedback. But so yes, we read every verbatim feedback that comes through the NPS survey into the Global Service Logistics Organization. And we trend those, and with those trendings, we understand where to put our next dollars.
And maybe you could talk a little bit more about some of those personas. So you talked about a territory manager. So what is sort of the day in the life and the kinds of applications that you need to provide to them so they can affect those net promoter scores and other things?
Yeah, day in the life of a territory manager, you deal with customer situations, escalations, you deal with proactively ensuring that the customers are set up for success, that Cisco is set up for success to deliver upon those contextual obligations. And there's always, of course, many customer feedbacks in there. But as they also support the sales function, we are what do you call it, a back office, so to speak. As they also are there to support the sales function, it's important for them to have the tools to support the sales functions, the sales teams, and be able to communicate that to the front office, the sales team. And for that, we use a lot of GIS tools, ArcGIS Cloud, PSD 2.0, as we call it, Premium Service Delivery. And those tools give them quick insight into where the customer sites are, marry that up with the Cisco coverage, understand the gaps, and go solve those gaps.
When we were talking a bit yesterday, you mentioned that for you in emerging areas, the tool Insights. Can you talk a little bit about how that's being used or where you might take it?
Yeah, that's come on the horizon, newly on the horizon, as when we launched PSD 8 years ago now, 7/8 years ago, time goes fast, we had a great automation wave, but we got stuck with some of the users saying, this tool is great, but I'm unable to run or to download the data or to use the data. I'm just seeing this data on the map because that's how we build it, because it was for automation in the back end on the tools. But many of the planners, and I'll elaborate on that function in a moment, they wanted to run their own analysis on the data. And so with the data analytics, the data insights that are coming through Esri nowadays, it's so much easier to download, analyze, work with the data, see the trends by region, by function. But instead of having to do that all manually, you can do it all in one application, which drives the adoption so much quicker, right? Adoption is about making it easy for everybody, simplistic, back to that original point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing a big trend, and it's what many people have talked about the usability. I also think about meeting our users where they are. You know, what's their workflow, what's their day in their life, and what is the thing we need to put right in front of them. And that's why things like the field technology is moving so quickly right now. You know, another thing that John talked about, which I think was a really fascinating concept. We heard Jack talk about the nervous system for the planet and sort of the big lofty things, but this idea of a nervous system for business is, I think it's really compelling. And I think about your problems you're solving, and I think there's probably no better use case for me than thinking about a nervous system than supply delivery that you're talking about, services delivery. So maybe it's an abstract concept, but I'm wondering for you, Warner, what does that mean to you in terms of Cisco, a nervous system for Cisco?
Yeah, the nervous system is impacted by the ecosystem, funny enough, right? The ecosystem is it's not just the Cisco organization that has the nervous system. Our nerves go out to our partners and our you can call them APIs, you can call them whatever they want. But the strategy that Cisco has and the strategy that our partner has and the tools that we commonly use to communicate between the organizations via APIs or via business or via the Oracle Cloud or via the Esri Cloud. All of those tools and technologies create that nervous system, and the customer creates an order via our package systems applications, and then it's being processed via Oracle, and we then have GIS inserted into both of those, and our partners read from that. It's a giant nervous system with quite some complexities, yeah.
Well, I think it's a powerful concept even to communicate to internal stakeholders about the mission that not just you, but all of us are on as we think about people who don't understand spatial technology, but we can really say, you know, this can be the backbone or the nervous system for this organization. And as John illustrated, connecting different parts parts together in completely new ways. So it'll be really interesting to watch the journey with Cisco as you go through that. I wanted to briefly touch on one final topic we heard before we spoke from Charles at Brandman about workforce development and the challenges that we face. And I'm wondering what your experience has been and your thoughts about engaging and enabling a workforce to think spatially and think in the way that we all do in this room. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. Several themes that were mentioned earlier on this morning come back to that topic as well. It's finding the evangelists to drive the change organization, to drive the what do you call the enthusiasm in the organization. You got to find those evangelists, and you got to set them up for success as well. So provide them with the right training through the Esri offerings that we have access to. And so many years ago, it was a very small group within Cisco that worked on this. But these days, the enthusiasm has grown much larger, and we're using many more of the trainings to keep driving adoption, users, evangelists. And the more of an army that becomes, the stronger the sound is within Cisco as well, and the more success we achieve with that as well. So it's important that we all know the same tools and language and drive that enthusiasm throughout the company.
You said something to me the other day that I think maybe plays right into this. You talked about a concept, I may not get the phrase right, first time right.
Fix it first time.
Fix it first time.
Yeah.
So as you roll an application out, and in my mind, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that also drives interest and excitement and buzz about getting into the geospatial area of business, whereas if you have a mess in your first deployment, if I put it frankly,
Yes.
then you have people running away from it saying, I don't want anything to do with it.
If you go to the wrong location, you didn't fix it the first time.
Yeah.
If you missed the time to be there, or the customer wasn't there, or the FE and the part didn't catch up with each other,
Yeah.
you didn't fix it the first time.
That's right.
It's very frustrating for a customer when you have to go back and back and back to solve it. So getting the analysis right to bring the right part to the location is critical. And often you can determine that by geospatial functions in heat or temperature-wise, earthquakes that may just have happened. But getting it all to meet up at the same time is very critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very clear, everything you're doing is driven completely by the business priorities and the customer experience, which is exactly what John was talking about right before this.
Our CEO is customer obsessed is our term. We're not customer driven, we're customer obsessed. That is a Cisco term these days.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Warner, we very much appreciate your time and joining us today. And thank you. And we're excited to see where Cisco goes with this technology.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.